I got your.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. What's up, Ben?
I got your email from last night.
Oh, good.
If you wanted, you sounded like you wanted to have just a one-to-one at some point. So,
yeah, I'll follow your calendar link, and we'll find a time to catch up. That'd be great.
Perfect.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So since I've done this before, you want me to run the show?
Have at it, my friend.
Okay, so we'll get started. If other people join, they'll probably pick up. So the idea is to get started as quickly as possible. We're not going to do intros. Intros happen the first time you speak on screen. Intro is 20 seconds or less. The way this works is very, very structured. So Ben, you're in the hot seat. So what you do is you pose a question to the group. You frame it in whatever way you need to, or whatever you think is appropriate to frame it. Pose your question to the group. And then the hot seat goes around in order. Everyone responds to your question without any feedback from you. No questions and answers. It's just the person talks, goes to the next person, the person talks, goes to the next person talks, goes to the next person talks. Then it goes back to you, and you have the opportunity to directly ask a question to anybody in that gave you some feedback. And it becomes a one-to-one with each one of those people. And then there's a certain amount of, then we actually sort of break in. After that's all done, you say, okay, I'm done with the one-to-one, and then we can go into a round robin, everybody speak, just general conversation. Last 10 minutes, somebody's gonna be a timekeeper. So when there's 10 minutes left, someone has to say 10 minutes. And then it's on you to sort of come up with an action plan, sort of summarize what you've gathered from it to help you get an action plan.
David, can you be our timekeeper?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. 9:50 to say 10 minutes, and that's how it goes. So now you're in the seat to do it.
Joe, to clarify, is that just like one round robin sort of thing there, or what?
Yeah, so it goes, Ben will pose the question. It'll go to everyone individually to give feedback without anybody else speaking. It goes back to Ben, then Ben can ask questions of anybody. And as soon as Ben's done asking his individual one-on-one questions, then it's open conversation. And then 10 minutes left, goes back to Ben. Ben said, so what I got out of this was blah, 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 blah.
As long as you remind me of the sort of itinerary, I think.
So the idea is not to turn it into chaos. The idea is to just let people speak. Part of this, it's done this way because in some hot seats, the hot seater ends up doing a lot of talking, or answering the questions or answering the feedback. And the idea is to get the people that are giving the feedback to be speaking as much as possible, and for you to be speaking as little as possible, other than asking questions and framing the question.
Yeah.
So with that, and Kelly, you joined a little late, so you'll pick up on what's going on rather quickly, I think. Okay, so Ben, give the context.
Great.
Start the question.
Thanks, everybody. So just for a bit of background that you can look at whilst I'm chatting, I have posted a link which will be pertinent to this. So I kind of founded and very much involved in a startup community here in Leicester in the United Kingdom. And we've run a couple of accelerators based on Rick Turozzi's Pie cookbook from Portland, Oregon, which has been fantastic. And one of the big things that came out of doing that was us getting our act together with regard to mentors and experts who could help the cohorts on our accelerator. So my kind of ask today, if it's not too woolly, is for some help really with socializing an idea for turning what you can see on that link potentially into something that might be a standalone thing in its own right. It's been incredibly successful for us. The amount of people agreeing to be mentors or experts on there has been way beyond what we anticipated. And the number of requests made through it has been fantastic as well. Hundreds of people, both on our accelerator and in our wider community. So the way I see mentoring, there's kind of a three-sided marketplace. There are mentors, mentees, and then there are community organizers who potentially make introductions, broker those sorts of relationships. And so the first two are very clearly a tick, a check. Yes, we are getting mentors, and yes, we're getting mentees. What I want to do is to get feedback and knowledge from people who organize communities, who wish to see mentorship happening in their community. Maybe they already do it a little bit, maybe they don't, to get an idea whether something like this would be attractive to them, whether it works with the way they see mentorship, and whether the idea of doing that on some sort of a platform or website is something that is attractive to them. So I hope that's not too woolly a brief, but that's what I'm looking to do, to basically socialize this idea of what you can see there as potentially a standalone product.
Okay. So I'll go first and I'll call on people. So my feedback here is I've seen several different attempts at mentor platforms that have come up. They break down when the volume increases, as in it becomes impossible to search. And then what we've seen as the number of mentors increases and the size of the community increases, you end up with a tiering effect. As in the people that are already pretty good, further along, sort of the rock stars of the community, obviously have some traction, rise to the front. And the people that really need the mentorship, that the people are just getting started, become timid. They become overwhelmed, like, I don't qualify for mentorship because I don't run with this crowd. And you get this insider-outsider effect. And I've seen it happen in stages. At first, it's really, really open. But then as it grows, the top 10% are really, really active, and the bottom 90% sort of start to fall away and become lurkers, and they don't know how to access anything. So as it scales, it's just you have this really strange problem where the people that need it the most access it the least. And to combat this, my sort of thought on this is something structured to get people in the loop. You know, so finding ways to make it more structured, to make sure those 90% don't get lost. And this would be, we used to do open mentor days, and sometimes we would actually just randomly put people in cohorts and just shove them through some sort of mentorship process to get that first meeting happening. The other way we've seen to be successful is post-meeting. So I mentor at several accelerators, and every time I give a presentation at an accelerator, meet them face-to-face, I usually do the pitch presentation, how to do good pitch presentation. And even though everyone knows that I'm a mentor, none of them reach out to me until after that presentation. And usually after the presentation, I say, yeah, just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll set some time. And I usually get 5 or 6 people who I was on the list all the time would reach out to me afterwards. So finding ways as it expands to actually create on-ramps for people would be something to think about. So that's my comment. I'm going to go through the list. Kim, you're up.
You're calling on me, yes?
No, Kim first.
Kim, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Kim. I have a background in media production, worked at Udacity, ed tech company in Silicon Valley, and I'm currently at the Women's Business Center in Syracuse, New York. I think this is an interesting idea for some of the audiences that I have seen served before. I almost see it as like a B2B to C kind of thing, where it could be an interesting plug-in for like our Women's Business Center, for example.
You're muted.
Sorry, I hit it with my notebook here. We have clients and we have a network of people who care about supporting them. We have a really hard time making those connections in a way that isn't super manual. So I could see a version of this being really useful for like getting our advisory board, for example, signed up with mentor profiles and having our clients be able to access that and put time on the calendar. Because like Joe said, we have a lot of people who say, I don't know what this means. I don't feel worthy of mentorship. There's a lot of hesitancy in reaching out, especially among new business owners. And I feel like this would give a really clear signal that not only are you able to do this, but we could build it into our onboarding, like you have to do this. Maybe you have to hit, a certain number of mentor sessions per year or something to continue receiving services. I think that would also work in terms of like different online learning platforms that do cohort-based learning. There's so many startups in that space that are trying to figure out the personal connection, the community between, an online learner and the rest of their peers and their the instructors themselves. And you can't support, obviously, at scale, one instructor to 10,000 or whatever students, but something like this, you could get technical mentors in there, like at Udacity. I saw how difficult that problem was to solve at scale. And you still would face the problem, I guess, of screening the mentors themselves. But yeah, it reminds me of Slack communities to a certain extent. I see it as more of like to get beyond what Joe was saying about I totally see how this would break down at that level, but if you kept it specific to communities, that could be a way to, provide value at the individual community level, like as, an add-on to an interesting Slack community or something like that.
Thank you.
James, you're up.
Got it. I'm going to take a slightly sort of a different approach to my feedback, and less of, on the idea or the platform, and kind of more on trying to understand your purpose behind it. I think that's one thing, when you get a chance to comment on, be interested to learn, just, because I don't want to like make any assumptions, but I think there's often just a tendency for entrepreneurially minded people to scale for the sake of scale, and I just wonder, like, to what extent that where this adds value compared to other sort of mentorship models that might be inherently less scalable, but highly focused on kind of the core value of mentorship. I'd say. Whenever we've done it, it's been, we've tried a bunch of different models, and it's with virtual as well, because that obviously opens up the opportunity for what types of mentors that you bring in. This is one interesting example here where we're all over the country, but we've done that with our accelerator programs too, and had people Zoom in and whatever. We made very specific intros, and different. That was an easier messaging for recruiting companies, was to say we're going to have very specific sorts of intros and give specific examples. But we also tried here's 40 people, meet all of them, and we're going to pre-schedule it and book you into it, and you kind of just get that big feedback from people who might have no experience in your industry, but you get a lot of it. Somewhat to Joe's point, I would say that model worked really well for people that were really early on, more so than people who were a little bit more advanced and kind of were like, yeah, I've kind of maybe been through some of those entry level types of mentorship questions that you might get from someone who doesn't really have a lot of specific experience for the problems that you have. So I give you all that context just sort of to try and figure out how you want to position this. Oh, we got more people joining. Cool. How you want to position this, whether it's something you actually want to, just open source, freebie, for profit. I'm not really sure. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say later for that. But that's all in my feedback at this point.
Thanks, James. Joe, may I break the rules and just make a clarification?
No.
Because I think about 3 or 4 people are going to ask the same question, and I want to save their breath.
So this is part of it that off to the side. Your clarification will come when you start asking the questions.
Okay.
But this is giving you feedback, because if everyone's misunderstanding it the same way, then you have to clarify your ask, and that's part of this.
Yeah.
Okay. Kelly.
Sorry, Ben, I was hoping you were going to clarify, because I am one of those people that I'm just not understanding what you're asking for. You use the term socialize. How do you socialize this? And I'm not sure what you meant by that. But then you said standalone. So I'm thinking that you're looking for a business model surrounding this. All right, good. Got a nod of the head without clarification. Okay. The first thing that came to mind when I thought about the business model is that I have just been introduced to a company called Maven.co. They're an alum of my university that I work at. I'm from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, an engineering university in upstate New York. And he has monetized the idea of bringing experts to those who need expert knowledge in any particular industry. So he's been able to do that, and it's actually going to be used in I-Corps, which is a federal program in the States to help researchers and scientists and engineers figure out if if they have product market fit and should move forward with their research and to commercialize it. So I'm going to be doing a test of it with my teams, and I can tell you how it's worked, but it seems really awesome. You put your question out there and experts respond with their short bio and how much it would cost to talk to them. And then you choose which ones you want to talk to. So I'm providing that to my teams, hoping that it's going to help them get some early validation and questions answered in areas that they are having trouble with. Just a general comment about mentoring groups and those mentees and the mindset that they might be in when they're going into this. A lot of them are thinking, how do I approach a mentor? How does this work for me? What do I ask? There's some confusion in what they could ask for or what they should ask for. So being as a mentee, I would want to hear from others who this has worked for before and what they did ask for. So I know kind of what the parameters are. James reminded me of the success of the first UVC event during COVID last year, where they had, I think, 15-minute meetings set up, which I think he touched on. I'm kind of like an extroverted introvert, and that really worked for me, that 15 minutes set up meetings with multiple people. I think I had 6 or 8 meetings and met a whole bunch of people, which was awesome. You knew you had to get in and out, be concise in what you're saying, but you also had that personal touch and you're able to create your own schedule. So that worked.
Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Tim, you're up.
Thank you. I'm a new member and I missed the intro on the platform, but just a comment. I'm a new member. I'm an engineer. I'm a mentor and a business owner. I've been in private practice my entire career as an engineer. I'm from upstate New York, and I've known Marty Babnick since high school. I'm on the engineering board at California Polytech in San Luis Obispo. I have been for quite a few years. I use 2 mentoring platforms currently. I use People Grove, and I use Firsthand at 2 different universities, one at Cal Poly and one at UB, because they are really structured. They have follow-up capability, mentor and mentee guidance with very disciplined selection of mentors by mentees. They drill down pretty deep. The mentors also have an opportunity to get feedback from the mentees, constructive, hopefully. And the mentees also have capability of getting direct, and these are all virtual, by the way. And these platforms that we're using, that I'm using, they've been around for a number of years, and, several thousand active users. I only focus on engineering. That's my only area of expertise. And I like the platforms. I like the way they're developing. And I'm a little bit familiar with the RPI group that was Kelly just mentioned from one of the fellows that I work with at RPI currently, or a recent grad, Mike Barron. So that's all I can add. I use 2 platforms for mentoring. They seem to work well because they're well structured, they're well promoted, and mentees and mentors have a pretty good understanding of what's expected of each other. And mentors are rated based upon their contribution and the takeaways that mentees get. To me, I think that's really helpful. It's certainly helped me improve my game. So that's my initial ad. I hope it wasn't too off target.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. You're muted, Joe.
Zach, you came late. Do you want to go?
Sure, but I don't know what the question is.
Okay. Ben, you get to ask the question again.
Okay, I'll be really quick. Hi, Zach. So we've just run an accelerator program in our startup community here in Leicester, UK. And one of the things we did was compiled a long anonymized list of mentors and experts who are willing to give time to help people. And it's been incredibly useful for both people on the accelerator and actually the wider community, because it's open to anybody, in fact. I'm just here to socialize the idea as a potential standalone platform. I'm going to cheat now by adding to my previous one and say that we're looking at potentially a model, maybe something a bit like meetup.com, where anybody can quickly create a list of mentors that they could share with the rest of their community, which was the clarification I was suggesting. So, yeah, I'm looking for a lot of you have suggested other platforms I should look at, and I shall do that. And I know there are loads of them out there, but I'm really looking to see how people organize mentorship at the moment, if they organize it, and if they don't, why not? That's another question as well.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I'll say that transitioning out of the military, the mentorship groups have been extremely important to me, and getting into San Francisco and into venture capital and so on. And a lot of mine have been organized around veterans, but I think the takeaways are very similar. And so I think both Kim and Tim mentioned helping the mentees understand how to use the mentors. I think it's extremely important, especially, I just think across the board. I know that I didn't know what I was doing at first. And then once I learned the right practices on follow-up and what to ask and the research I should do beforehand and so on, I know that my mentees or mentors have become best friends. You know, there are some mentors that I talk to once every 2 weeks still, and I've gone way beyond what they ever, probably signed up for. The other thing that I would mention is just another platform that maybe goes a little bit past the mentorship thing, but it's another place for expert advice, which is Clarity FM, or Clarity is a good example of a lot of different skill sets all provided in one place, but for like a regular, like a much lower price than what like your enterprise level expert networks cost. You might pay somebody 50 cents a minute or $1 a minute, and it's I don't know. We've used that a lot in the startups that I've been on to get expert opinions on stuff that we didn't understand in adjacent markets and so on. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I could bring up is just the mentee coaching and follow up, like somehow nudge follow up to make sure that people aren't burning mentors for the platform.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
I was wondering if everybody who mentioned a link could put it in the chat just so we could each see it, because it was hard to keep track of it. So if you had a...
I've scribbled what I can down. Yeah, if you can, that's even better. So if you've mentioned anything that comes close to this, or you think of anything else, thank you, Kelly. Yeah, that would be great.
So David, you're up.
Got it. Hi guys, I'm David. I'm a student at Lemoyne. I'm pretty young and pretty new to this whole space, so I don't have a lot of experience to speak from. But what I can say is that in all of my experiences with getting matched with mentors myself, at this point in my life, I've never been a mentor. But in my experience, it's all been very local, organic, and very natural feeling. And it was almost always directly from me reaching out to someone personally, or somebody that I know connecting me to another person. And so just in my experience, I have not yet encountered the need to have a platform like this. So just at this point, all of the needs for mentorship that I've encountered those needs have been able to be met locally and naturally without the use of a more widespread matching type of system. So I personally have not yet encountered a need for this, but at the same time, I definitely can see from listening to all of you guys speak, it's been very helpful for me to go last, and I can see how, later down the road with more scalable startups, this could be helpful for matching them with mentors. And like what Tim was saying in engineering, I think this could be very helpful for a specified space like that, like in engineering or just another specific industry. I think it's really important to have mentors that are a bit widened and not so localized or focused directly on just the people that you personally know. So I definitely could see how in industries like that, engineering and also high tech startups, in those type of spaces, this could be very helpful.
Brilliant. Thanks, David.
Okay, now Ben, you get to ask questions now individually of people on one-on-ones, and then once you want to break it into a free-for-all, you just let us know.
Okay. Kim, I'm going to start with you because some of the things you said chimed with my personal experience, and you talked about you've clearly got quite a well-defined set of people that you seek to help. Am I right? Yep. Yeah. So that's certainly something that we had in mind rather than this trying to be kind of LinkedIn where anybody could find anybody else. How at the moment do you organize mentorship?
We don't really. We do if someone reaches out specifically looking for that, and it's an incredibly manual process of racking our brain Rolodexes for who would be a good fit for this person in the situations in which they really mean mentor. I think, if we're going to define that word, a lot of us are, me included, are talking about lightning rounds, like asking for advice. But if we're talking like deep lasting relationships, we don't have a mentorship, any kind of model for that right now. And yeah, when we do, it's incredibly manual.
That's incredibly similar experience to us. And I have problems with the word mentorship. I don't know about anybody else, but the word mentor sounds like you're appointing somebody to be your godparent. And there isn't a word that means something a bit lighter than that necessarily. You can think of it. So yeah, thanks, Kim. That's great. Who else? Joe, tell me more about, as you said, as mentoring and the community, sort of people helping each other out as it scales, as you've obviously accomplished. How would you structure, filter, layer introductions, whether it is sort of proper mentorship or just talk to my friend, he's an IP lawyer, he might be useful to you, kind of thing?
Some of this is when the way you said it, it's the different pathways. So even in conversations we're having here around mentorship, people say mentorship, they're actually referring to three different things. They're referring to mentors, they're referring to advisors, and they're referring to subject matter experts. And they kind of mush them all together. And then we always tell them is a mentor helps you be a better you, a coach helps you learn something specific, and a subject matter expert gives you answers. So it's like if somebody's coming in with a certain question, you sort of have to pre-sort it. It's like, are they looking for someone to like general startup, help me figure out how to be a founder? That's one. Right. Then there's I know I need to know how to hire people and I have to get better at that. Who can I talk to improve? And then there's I have a particular engineering challenge in AI, or I'm looking for someone who knows about this particular module integration with an API. So it's making sure that when they come in, you're not matching sort of a generalist mentor who's going to talk to them about fundraising with the guy who's like, I just want to understand this API. Why doesn't it work? And someone goes in there, it's like, yeah, I've used that API before. It's a piece of crap. Let me get you. Let me walk you through how to create your own sandbox. So that I think is important to pre-sort the types of questions and type of help people need, and that way you don't end up with this free-for-all of mismatches of people that don't really know what they need, and mentors. Some are subject matter experts coming in where guys like, hey, I'm just looking for general help with my startup. And the guy's like, I'm a guy that's been doing C++ for 23 years. Like, I know everything about everything. I can't give you any general startup advice. So you end up with these bad interactions that aren't well sorted. So, part of this is it all comes down to the sorting. Some of this is in the language. What is a person looking for a mentor versus, say, a subject matter expert? Does that help?
That's very helpful. And again, chimes with our experience. So that's good. There is a big distinction between someone who might be what you and I would understand to be a mentor, somebody who's there for you, as opposed to somebody who is a subject matter expert. And we've already kind of seen that distinction. The coaching is an interesting one because I see coaches as kind of those Sherpas you referred to the other time. So,
which they can be, but part of this is if someone needs a coach, that might be a paid position, but if they know they need to learn something specific, which is I got to get better at giving feedback to my employees, can someone coach me on that? It's like, yeah, go get a coach.
And dare I say, dare I say it, that could be a monetization route for a platform, should it exist.
It could be, because there's people that are very, very good at very, very specific things, and if they're very, very good, they should be paid for it. And if it's a multi-session engagement, is actually teaching a skill, I think that's actually appropriate. But getting to the person into a coaching arrangement where it's very clear what they're trying to learn, as in they're going in to learn a skill or about something, at the end of it, they will have some clearly defined outcome over a number of sessions. I think that's appropriate, but right now it gets mushy, as in there's amazing coaches out there that don't know anything about technology. And there's people that are amazing subject matter experts that are just really lousy mentors. And that's what I've found personally, is I've had to deal with all of them. So contextualizing the interaction for me has been a manual process of connecting the right person at the right time with the founder who's asking me something. Making that scalable would require sort of understanding all the contexts and understanding where people are good. It's like calling everyone a mentor is, I think there are really crappy mentors out there that are really amazing people that have helped my companies, but they're really crappy mentors.
Yeah.
Amazing subject matter experts.
Perfect, thank you. And that sounds awfully familiar. Cool, thank you. I don't know if I've got any more specific one-to-one questions, but I think I've got a question or two that potentially multiple people here might be able to sort of answer. May I revert to?
Now it's open talk now. It's open talk now. You ask questions and we turn this into an open conversation.
Okay, so talking to other people out there who do or aspire to run mentorship, it seems that the most common route is personal, one-to-one, scratch your head, I know, you should talk to this person who I saw recently. And that seems to work. But in my experience, at least I'm getting to the age where I forget who I know. And I've got a very long list of contacts in my community and I can't always remember who's out there. And part of this was trying to rekindle my memory as to who was out there and potentially helpful. And I wondered if other people have had that experience, and potentially might there be things like subconscious bias or indeed overt bias towards people of certain backgrounds, or the person you spoke to in the bar last week as opposed to the person you spoke to the bar in three years ago, that might potentially lead to not making the best connections, or just forgetting who is out there and available in your community to help people. I wondered, has anybody had that experience of being a bit woolly about who they should introduce to?
I'd say go ahead.
Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, my experience actually lines really up with that. I've done a massive amount of, like, I guess you could say, on purpose networking over the past 3 years as I transitioned from military to tech. And I've met really great people who are all willing to continue to give back to me and to others. And then I get on these calls probably once a week with somebody else who's transitioning out of the military and wants to go this way. And the only people I can remember are like the 3 people that I talked to, this week, right? Otherwise I'd have to go to like a spreadsheet or try to find, scroll through my LinkedIn and 3,000 connections or whatever. So some way to organize people that fit into maybe the mentorship category versus the other two that you mentioned, Joe, would be really useful for me. I'd probably be, if it was on my phone, I'd reference it probably every single time somebody calls me to talk about it.
Thanks, Zach. That's great. So just to elaborate on that, if I was able to give you the ability to have almost like a public address book, albeit perhaps the name's anonymized, but a public address book of all of the people you believe could be helpful, and you could share that with somebody and say, here, look, here's some people I know. If there's anybody in there you fancy talking to, let me know. And the system, whatever it is, might actually allow you to vet those introductions. So if somebody made a really dumb choice, you could say, no, I don't think that's the right person. But largely speaking, you could pull those things out of your LinkedIn and your memory and put them in a place where you could easily give people a menu of who you know, who you think might be helpful. Does that sound interesting to you?
Yes, but I think you nailed something there that makes it not LinkedIn, right? Because I think that originally LinkedIn thought that that's what they would be. You could look at someone's network and say, oh, you know that person, intro me. But then you go, actually, I don't know that person. There's a social network around it, and we're connected because of some reason. I think what's interesting about this, like you mentioned, maybe obfuscating names or something, somehow preventing it from being a vanity metric that I've got a bunch of people on my list, or who those people are, might be really helpful if it is like some other way. But however that works, it would be great if you could solve how, like, to make it clear or clean. I would offer that to everyone, and if I could curate. Oh, and by the way, I think these 3 or 4 might be most useful based on the conversation we had. But here's the rest of my list too. That'd be really. I would use that.
Okay. I think you've completely understood where I'm coming from, and look, we've got a very open mind about it, and this may be a whole bunch of nonsense anyway, but you seem to have completely understood what we've understood from our community. So that's really cool, and thanks for sharing that. Yes, curation, absolutely, it's got to be curated. And somebody mentioned the idea of scoring or kind of giving like a rating to mentors, but I dare say a rating to the person making the introduction might be good too, so that people don't turn it into a vanity thing. Look how many LinkedIn connections I've got, sort of thing. So that's really interesting as well.
What we found, and this is after trying a whole bunch of these mentor platforms, is there's a half-life to some of these mentors. People are mentoring, they get busy, sometimes they're on a new project, sometimes they're doing a fundraise. So I've always tried to keep this in my head. I've tried to distribute that as much as possible to all the other mentors, so everyone's keeping track of everyone else. So any door gets you to the right person eventually. I've also had the challenge of some of my better mentors specifically asked me to be a gate for them. As in, like, I don't want to be on a platform, but if you intro them to me, I will talk to them. So, and a bunch of the people that are mentors that I've used have other people they know that are also willing to be open with a direct intro. So there is this sort of hidden layer of mentorship, as in you can intro someone to a mentor and they actually have their crew, their silent crew behind them that only takes direct invites and doesn't want to be on the open platform. And it's very, very hard to quantify and socialize that. Of the mentor group that I had at Rain, I had 100 mentors. About 50 of the 100 actually said, I don't want to be in a spreadsheet. I want you to be like my single point of contact and referral.
That's incredibly familiar. Now, I don't know whether we're just lucky here in Leicester, but I had exactly the same thing where a lot of people were like, I'd love to mentor, but I don't want to be pestered. And I want you or people in your little gang, the team, to make the intros so that I don't get bad matches and have to deal with this, because we're talking about very busy people high up in organizations. And so what we did, and what we've got at the moment on my link at the top, you can request, but you don't automatically get to talk to that person. We get an email at the moment, very kind of crude. We get an email with the request and the person they want to speak to, and we either go, yep, and forward it on to them, or we reply saying, no, I'm sorry, I don't think that's a suitable match, or to this person instead. So we're very clear that we do that. And that's why something like 90% of the people who we asked to be mentors or experts on our thing said yes straight away, because we were very clear that they will not be pestered by anybody. And that worked really well. So that, what you just said, really chimes with our experience here. There's a lot of people who would love to help, but they don't want trouble. They don't want to have to deal with idiots and time wasters and that sort of stuff. And so that's something that really chimes with our experience here, and definitely something that we would, we intend to retain and focus on in whatever we build out here. So thank you.
From the business model standpoint, so I put in Peter Gardner's link there. He started something a long time ago called StartGrid, which was an attempt to both map the ecosystem, the community, and then get all the mentors on and sort of create a map with access to mentors on the platform. What it ended up moving toward was corporate innovation, as people that were actually willing to pay to have access to a stable of experts. And it migrated there, because when you start talking about communities that would be using a mentor platform, oftentimes they don't have money. It's a personal thing for me. It's like the people can afford it actually don't need it as much as the communities need it, and they can't afford to pay. So there's this definite challenge of how these things go is if it follows the money as a business model, it ends up going to the people that can pay, and it's valuable to them. But it ends up not being such a community resource, and there's a tension there. There's a tension.
There is, and I have I'm well aware of that, because part of me would like this to be something that can make money and be a successful business if it's possible. But I very much see this as something. We built this in the first place for the benefit of our community, from which I take no money whatsoever, other than find great mentors and venture partners for myself. I don't get paid to do community organisation. Don't really think you should be if you're the sort of founder of it. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think I mentioned it early, but the kind of business model that we thought might work is something a bit like meetup.com, where there can be a fee, but it's a very small one for communities. But there are lots of potential upsells. You could do paid for mentoring. You could have the kind of Sherpas, to use your term from last time, could be people who pay for a sponsored listing that overrides any curation, but they have to pay to be on there. Lots of other things. You could broker sort of one-to-one call type sort of paid for mentoring. A lot of things you could do, but I did kind of think that the meetup.com route business model might be relevant to this, where anybody who wants to set up a mentoring community in their area or in their discipline, whatever it is, would basically have their own page in the same way you have a meetup.com group, and you choose who's on there, both in terms of mentors and mentees. So you have quite tight sort of curatorial control of who you help and who's giving the help.
And when you think of subject matter experts, I mean, this could actually, I've also mentored, in addition to startups, at Lane Arts Council. So I've actually worked with the artist community. So there's these subgroups, these sub niches that are also looking for very specific mentoring. In this case, it was artists and ceramicists and sculptors for young sculptors. So there was this, it wasn't startups, it was also incredibly valuable.
I think arts and cultural organizations are potentially highly relevant, and I've deliberately not tried to stereotype this thing as a startup community thing, although obviously startup communities are a very good sort of first place to go because I'm familiar with them. But actually, the people I've been talking to locally in Leicester, the arts and cultural community people, are quite interested. So the first person who sort of signed up and said, yeah, I want to try this out, is a bunch of people running a filmmakers group. And there's loads of filmmakers in Leicester, and they don't know each other very well yet. And loads of them are like, yeah, this is great. And it's that usual thing. Everyone's, yeah, isn't this wonderful? We've got a community, right? What are you actually going to do? And of course, I come in with my startup community experience and say, well, you should start helping each other. Yeah, you're not here to sell things to each other. If it's a real community, you should be helping each other. So mentoring, expert advice, shoulder to cry on, whatever you want to call it. Those are, to mine, the most valuable things a community can do. And I think the Film Leicester people immediately, that sort of chimed with them. They sort of, that resonated, and they understood that. So yeah, we keep an open mind as to who this might work with most.
If I can add, actually, in the spirit of friendly candor, Ben, I would offer a counter to that. In the limited time, first off, you have limited time in your community building to start, let alone limited time probably to even devote to that, which would, to me, emphasize need for focus. And I would say, I think we've been talking in broad terms a lot about mentorship. We got into some good categories, thanks to Joe for putting that in the conversation. But I don't even think we've fully defined who this is for. Is this for a community, like a community builder who wants to use this tool for themselves and how they're leveraging mentorship? Is it supposed to be open source to anybody looking for a specific type of mentor or subject matter expert? Or there's like a lot of different areas that you could focus on, which inherently focus on which problem to start with. And then there's going to be lots of shiny objects like the arts that you can look into as another vertical. But I think you're going to stretch yourself too thin in the early days and dilute the.
I think it's what would Martin Babinek say? And he'd stick to one.
Stick to one.
Yeah.
And to this point, people that are coming onto the platform that haven't done mentoring before are going to need some guidance. I've heard it a couple times of people doing the mentor madness type of approach.
Yeah.
Invite a bunch of people in. So some sort of structured approaches of like, here's what here's how you might design a good program around this. You're not just saying, here's a bunch of mentors. It's here's some activities or some formats that you could use that we've seen be effective that you can try. They're almost like templates.
Yeah, and of course, the fact that this was so successful within our accelerator kind of proves that point, is that there's a sense of context there. Of course, you should talk to mentors. You're on an accelerator. Everybody knows that. And you know, so we said on day one, okay, I need you all to go away and make at least 10 requests for intros. And it was like, it didn't need explaining because that's what they anticipated. Whereas you might go to an arts community and they were like, okay, mentorship, what does that actually mean? So yeah, totally get it.
So I'll give my last comment, which is do a little bit of research in terms of mentorship platforms that I've been approached by people to try out.
Yeah.
So I've actually tried like 5 with various organizations we've been involved in, and probably seen at least 15. So just be aware that it's a highly competitive space, and most I've tried we abandoned, and for one reason or another.
I'm under no illusions, Joe, and I'd rather come away from here today saying either A, someone's done this better already, it doesn't need doing, or B, there's a very good reason why this doesn't already exist. We've not invested much in this. We did what we needed to do for our local community, and as I said, this is just socializing an idea. So I'm all for it, and I think my previous experience with other startups, the day you launch, that's when you find out there are 50 other competitors, and that's can't be helped really. You should decide whether you're going to go for it or not.
Just to add to that, Ben, you know, I don't know if you need to even necessarily put it in a competitive context, like depending upon your purpose for this thing.
Yeah.
You know, who really cares? If you're just trying to solve a specific problem and you have some people who are also trying to solve this problem and you built the platform, I mean, unless you're trying to make a living from this one particular product, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, within the bounds of it being too expensive to even build, me and my team would be quite happy to build something that helped a bunch of people. And it's, you know, it's not essential that this becomes a unicorn within 3 years for us. I completely agree.
They've all fallen apart in the exact same way, which is they all appear to work in a community when maybe you have a couple hundred startup people or people in the community and maybe 50, 60, 100 mentors.
Yeah.
Once you start getting to any reasonable scale, 1,000 people on the platform, they all start to fall apart. No one knows who to talk to. It becomes just chaos. People lurk. There's some people that just don't check their messages anymore, don't have the notifications on. So what I've really seen is they all seem to work when they start because they've all come out of the community, which is like, we have something, how do we get it out there? They get it out there, it becomes big, and you have sort of the anonymous Facebook problem. There's thousands of people on here, there's no connectivity. So if you're going to actually try to do it, either keep it hyper local, instanced, or actually think, how is this going to change significantly at scale, and what do we have to do to make it work where others have failed? Because a lot of them have failed at that scale, like at scale, it's crappy.
I'd always, my hunch was that it would probably be primarily, as you described, a hyper local thing. But quick question I have about the ones that you've seen that started to break at scale. How did they operate in terms of who decided who could contact whom? Could you reach out to somebody as a potential mentor and they get a direct message and you have to say yes or no to them? Or was there a third party community sort of admin curator in between who could go no, yes, sort of thing?
Well, there was a design to be a curator in there, but at some point there was just so much activity that you were just playing like switchboard operator.
Yeah.
And it became actually easier just to text message people. Because it's almost like the Salesforce problem. It's like, screw the dashboard. This is trying to be a CRM. It's making me fill out fields. I'm just going to ping this guy on a text. Hey, you meet this guy, you send his LinkedIn profile, and so it just sort of, and then once that starts to happen, the platform becomes useless because it comes out of date like within a week.
Right. The couple platforms that I mentioned that I'm on are very specific. So they've been developed for their private groups. So you request to join, you get accepted to join. They're very focused on their university community, their alumni specifically, and students. So the mentors are specifically screened, what their expertise is, what their capability of sharing knowledge is, how they can help and how they cannot help. So there's a menu, a very specific menu that they respond to. The mentees are the same way. And because a mentee requests to contact someone, they indicate exactly what they want to speak about. A mentor may not be the right one, and they'll get bounced back by the mentor to go, no, I don't have that capability. I don't have that expertise. There's a request for turnaround time. If you don't turn around within 48 hours, okay, you're probably as a mentor going to get dinged. And you may not be on that platform for very long. The mentors comment on the mentees, what they've shared briefly. As I mentioned earlier, the mentees comment in 3 or 4 areas. Was the person knowledgeable? Were they helpful? Did I progress in my mentee experience? So these are really structured, and we're basically dealing with engineers who are structured anyway. So it's procedural, but it seems to work because mentors who provide good are good resources are recognized by the mentees. That's probably all I can add to that.
We're running up on the hour, so we can respond to it, but we're running up on the hour. Like
Okay.
it's 9:57, so we should be summing up now.
Okay, well,
And then we can continue after if you want to, but
I've not got much to ask, but two things came up. Firstly, Timothy, thanks for that. Is the mentoring systems that you use, is there an individual or individuals who have the job of organizing and maintaining everything, and are they people who are paid to do it?
In the case of the People Grow group, which I am one of the administrators for the civil environmental engineering, there's several volunteers, and then there's a paid additional administrator that is part of the university system. And they work collectively. The university people interface more with the platform owners, and the administrators from myself interface with mentees and mentors.
Great, thank you. I think I'm about done. Has anybody heard of Dunbar's number? It's this theory that humans can't cope with more than about 150 contacts, and that the natural size of villages and good team sizes is about 150. I wonder if that's relevant to this this thing.
yes, this is like, there's, when you think of companies, they change at 40, 90, and 150.
Yeah.
There's just strange, and we call it the numbers where a layer of middle management occurs. When the number of direct reports actually requires another administrative layer, you see significant changes in the company. And the Dunbar's number is at 150, where you can't know everybody. You can't know them personally, you know of them.
That's where everybody starts hating their company, because it gets too big.
it gets too big, and you become a number, not a name. So it's so that might be on point. Yeah. Cool.
I think that I've had an amazing bunch of feedback there. So thank you to everybody. I'm not going to ask anymore. I might contact one or two of you directly in the future if that's okay. Some of you had some very specific things that I was interested in, but that was really, really useful. Exactly as useful as I thought it would be. I'm not surprised, but yeah, really, really appreciate it. And if, as often is the case, something pops up into your head like 5 minutes after we end the call, then do drop me a line. I can put an email address in if you like.
I would say better than that, post it to the Startup Community Builders Circle.
Yeah, do that.
So please share that. I think
conversation happen. So this is the end of the hot seat, the official hot seat. This is the first official one, right?
Yeah.
So how did everyone think that it went? Good, bad?
Let others before I.
You're all fired. No, no, it was excellent for me.
I joined for curiosity, and I found it really informative. Very informative. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for being here.
This is the idea. We will, from the startup community builders perspective, we want to do more of these hot seats so we just don't end up every other month meeting to just talk about like, hey, how's it going? The idea is if people have a particular challenge and they want feedback from a group of people who've done something that's before, or from outsiders who come from a totally different industry, they say, I want to call a hot seat. I have a question, bring the group together. Process happens, the person gets feedback, and hopefully it's useful. And this is like, the idea is to do this more often than not, as in once a month, or maybe once every other month, but really sort of as a on-demand, person raises their hand, I need a hot seat. And that's the idea. So I think this one went well. It's actually pretty good feedback and a lot of information packed into an hour or so.
It sounds like the Gumball rally. Just suddenly the phone rings. Gumball. Everyone has to do a hot.
Kind of. Yeah. That's actually when you have startup community founders that are like in a community that have done these things. It is like that. Like, I need a hot seat. Can we do it Friday? Like, can we all meet tomorrow night at the bar to do a hot seat? And that's how it's done. So the takeaway, if you want to do one of these on your own, is to keep it structured so it's very high signal, very low noise. And yes, there'll be lots of follow-up, but for the attendees, it's ideally very high signal, which I hope it was for you, Ben.
Definitely. Thank you.
I love the structure. I gotta jump. See everybody next time.
Thanks.
Zach, bye.
Appreciate it.
Forward to it.
I can hang out for a bit, but I guess the hot seat's officially done.
Yeah,
Hope I did a good job moderating.
you did awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I enjoyed it too. It was a lot of fun.
This is fun, right? I mean, that's part of the
Yeah.
thing. This is
This was
actually kind of
great.
fun.
I'm shocked how fast the hour went. It was like that. You know, you
Boom,
thought
it's
something
done.
was structured and it's just gone.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when we, with our community, transitioned to doing meetups, which were kind of fun.